took this class, SFL 280, Dynamics of Clothing, a couple years ago, and Dr. Bauer asked me to give a presentation on disabilities and fashion because I was born with an ulnar deficiency. So 15% of the world's population has a disability, which is kind of shocking. It was shocking to me, and I have multiple disabilities, so I figure I make up more than my fair share. But it's the largest minority group. So when my mom was about 24 weeks pregnant with me and my twin sister, she started having complications, and this is what she said about it. She says, in a very in-depth ultrasound, the doctors discovered that twin A, me, was really struggling. Her right arm was visibly smaller and missing some fingers, and one of her legs appeared to be short as well. It was hard to get a good enough look to really tell what was going on, and my mom was on bed rest pretty much the whole time that she was pregnant with me, and she remembers just lying on the couch and wondering and worrying, and she says she doesn't know, or she didn't know if she was ever going to be able to smile again. Just because she was so stressed about me and Gwyneth, my twin, and if we were going to be born healthy. And then when I was born, she remembers unwrapping the blanket and seeing my hand for the first time, and really not knowing what my future was going to be like. Flash forward to now, and she says that I think I live a totally normal life, and we never would have imagined that when I was born. And a lot of her concerns have completely disappeared. So I love fashion. I love clothes. I have a very cultivated sense of style. Every day getting dressed is an adventure. And so I take a lot of mirror selfies, as you can see. But this is a big deal in the disabled world because a lot of people who have disabilities, they're not represented. We don't see them. And so when people post pictures like this and are out there, put themselves out there with their disabilities, it does a lot. This is just one example of some things that I personally struggled with relating to clothes. Tying my shoes. It was awful. It was so hard to learn how to tie my shoes. I can do it, but it was really difficult. And it's hard for a lot of people. Shoes in general, impossible. They're not made for people with less than 10 fingers. Other things that are difficult, putting in earrings, doing your hair, buttons, zippers. Imagine that you're in a wheelchair and you have to get dressed. And pants, that's hard. And a lot of people don't think about this. So when I was little, I love rings. And I only have 7 fingers. I don't have a lot of options. Although the fingers on my right hand are really small. So I was born with, like I said, an ulnar deficiency. I'm missing the ulnar bone in my right hand. So that is the bone that's connected to these 3 fingers. So we think I know I don't have a thumb, and we're pretty sure I don't have these ones, and that I have these ones instead. I wanted a ring for my baby hand. And in 2003, when I was 4, we didn't have Etsy. There wasn't an H&M. There wasn't really an option for little tiny rings. And so my mom, I think my first ring was a hoop earring that she cut the back off, and that's what I wore as a ring. And then my next couple of rings were toe rings because they're just smaller. And in an ironic twist, I'm actually not wearing any rings right now because I'm wearing my rings as toe rings. So they're back to their original form. But that's one way that me and my mom have worked around that, because I didn't want to just I can't do that. No, there are ways that we can fix this. Another example is earrings. It is incredibly hard. It's not impossible. I can do it. But to put in an earring and a back with just one hand, because I can't reach my right hand over to my ear to put in an earring. So you'll see on the PowerPoint there are earrings that don't have backs, and you just slide them in. Or with the spiral earrings, you just screw it in. And it's very easy to do it with one hand. But again, that's a new thing. They didn't have that when I got my ears pierced 8 years ago. So I did learn how to put in earrings with a back. Another example of some alterations that I've made to my clothes. As you can see, this arm is a lot shorter than my left arm. And so long sleeves and coats especially are a little bit harder. So when I was little, my grandma, who is an amazing seamstress, she cut off the sleeves of the right side a little bit shorter, and then re-hemmed it with the same like existing hem. And she probably did that to about like 10 articles of clothing, and that's what I wore for a couple of years. And at the time, I really hated it because I thought that everyone would notice. And trust me, shorter sleeves is not more noticeable than 2 fingers. So looking back now, I am so grateful that my grandma did that, because it made doing things a lot easier. Another thing that I still struggle with or have to figure out different solutions for are mittens or gloves. Obviously, I can wear a normal mitten, a glove on this hand. This hand's a little more difficult. And so one thing that we have done is I bought like 4-year-old mittens, like mittens for 4-year-olds. So they're very small, and I just wear the right one on my right hand and then a regular left one. That has worked really well. But recently, my twin, she served a mission in Finland while I was serving in Denmark, and a lady in her ward hand knitted me a pair of customized mittens, and one of them is just a regular mitten, and the other one is this little tiny knitted mitten, and she sent them to me for Christmas, and when I opened them, I cried, like literally tears were pouring out. So these are just examples of things that I have struggled with, that we've found solutions for, specifically in terms of clothing, because that is what people foresee, and most disabilities are visible. And so there's also that contrast between wanting to be cute and normal and wear everything and do everything that other people do, but having these workarounds that a lot of people don't think about. So I'd also like to mention that my mom has been really instrumental in how I dress, but also my confidence levels. She never made me feel like I had to hide my hand. In addition, I'm an identical twin. There's never any competition or comparison. And having that as a role model, as my background, has really made me feel comfortable with my body, and love my body and appreciate it for the gift that it is. Also, probably dress a little more wild or outlandish, just because I know that people are already looking at me, and I might as well give them something to look at. So I love wearing bright colors and like big poofy sleeves, and things like that, that rather than hide my disability or my hand, I embrace it. Thankfully, there are a bunch of adaptive brands that have come out, and there has been an increase of 80% over 2019-2020 in searches for adaptive clothing. This means that people have searched like the key terms, adaptive clothing. And hopefully this means that, one, people are aware that there are more options, and people are not just settling for a gray sweatsuit, as cool as that may sound. People want to look their best, regardless of their body. And number 2, hopefully this increase means that markets are responding to this demand. For example, Zappos, which is a shoe website, they have started an adaptive line, and they work with shoes that are easy on and off, that you can do with one hand or no hands. Another example of an adaptive brand is Tommy Hilfiger Adaptive, and they are actually like the leading force behind this. Tommy did a collaboration with Zendaya a couple of years ago, and they created an entire line that was inclusive and fit for adaptive needs. This is what he says. He's seen the challenges associated with dressing children with autism firsthand. Tommy Hilfiger actually has children who are diagnosed on the autistic spectrum. And so he says that he understood the potential impact of an adaptive collection. Another campaign is called Runway of Dreams Foundation, and they are focused on using models with disabilities to expand their representation. And this is our Instagram page, and the lady who started this has a TED Talk, and there are lots of different ways that people can interact with this and find out more. I'd like to encourage people to follow people with disabilities on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter and add that voice to your stream or your feed, to add a different perspective to getting dressed and to representation. And also, next time you're trying on shoes or clothes or jewelry, try it on with one hand. Try tying your shoes with one hand, putting in earrings, or doing your hair with one hand. The bottom line is that when we see people with disabilities as customers, as people who want to represent themselves in a cute or stylish or professional manner, then stores will respond to that. It's the same as if you're looking at stores with categories like plus size or petite or maternity. There should also be a category for adaptive clothing.